Today we've got a few government policy updates to cover, with news from Illinois, Rhode Island, and New Jersey, an update on Curaleaf International, and a couple of other things as well. Hey everybody, Mo here. Welcome to the November 1st edition of Mary Jane Markets. This is a show covering the developing news of the North American cannabis sector every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or thereabouts. Also cover a few of the operators, Cresco Labs, Curaleaf, Green Thumb Industries, and TruL. The goal here is to do all of the due diligence I normally do as an investor in these companies, and then provide that to you in a concise episode so you can stay updated. We're going to talk about Illinois again. It's the 5th largest market in the nation, with both recreational and medicinal programs in place. Cresco Labs, Curaleaf, and GTII all compete in it, so I've been following it closely. And if you've been following along to these episodes, you know that the state held long-awaited lotteries for 185 dispensary licenses over the summer, and while that went down and winners picked, the process has been mired in controversy, the state admitting to a mistake in scoring, and multiple lawsuits were filed. Last week I told you that those lawsuits had been aggregated and a hearing was going to take place on Thursday, October 28th. Well, since then, drumroll please, the state was hit with another lawsuit. We just can't seem to catch a break here, and these updates I've been providing you guys have been pretty useless. And I don't want to keep bringing this up in the hopes that there will be some progress soon and then find out 2 days later that things are being delayed once again. So I've decided I won't be giving any more updates on this topic until something is firm. Let's just say that this is where we're stuck for now in Illinois until my next update. The point of this show is to cut through all of the noise out there in the sector and provide you with the actual fundamental news that you should know if you're investing in these companies. So really disappointing. I was really hoping that 185 new locations would help boost wholesale sales for our MSOs in 2021, but it looks like we'll just have to wait and see. A follow-up on the Rhode Island medicinal lottery that we spoke about last week. As a reminder, the state ranks 44th in the nation in terms of GDP, so quite small and really an unattractive market. They held a drawing this past Friday, October 29th, for 5 dispensary licenses, and you can see the winners here. I did find the 29 qualifying applicants that were vying for these licenses, and as expected, the MSOs we talk about on this channel were not on the list. No surprise there. We expected they wouldn't be going after these given how small this market is compared to the others they are competing in right now. Next, I think we need to play catch up on New Jersey. This is the 8th largest economy in the nation with a potential $4.5 billion cannabis market. The state has a medical and recreational program, with rec being legalized earlier this year. Recently, I came across a couple of articles from New Jersey reporting on operators in the state pushing for recreational sales to start ASAP. They claim that they are ready to start servicing adult consumers. Meanwhile, the state and its commission is taking a more cautious path, worried that opening up adult use sales will limit medical product for patients. NJ.com reporting that Curaleaf's regional president of Northeast Operations, Patrick Johnson, said that the company only needs about 25 to 35% of its current grow to supply the medical market. The other 2/3 is excess that could go to adult use. Later in the article, he's quoted as saying, "Everybody has been ramping up their cultivation sites and are now sitting on extra product. We've done this before. We've done it without an issue. There's a blueprint on how to do this the right way. We are all ready, willing, and able. I think it's very important that we get this market stood up soon." The article also cites other operators holding the same opinion. So given that, I totally understand where the operators are coming from. This second statement from Curaleaf's Patrick Johnson I think is accurate. I've seen them and others operate in both med and rec programs adequately. Like in my home state of Illinois, the state mandates that medicinal patients be given priority and a certain amount be set aside for them. I think that works well both here and in other states. So I dug into this a bit more to try and understand the commission's position. As an investor, I have a knee-jerk reaction to things that mess with my bag. So New Jersey's regulatory commission is cited as being on the other side of this earlier in October when awarding new medical licenses. At the time, the commission's executive director, Jeff Brown, described a different environment than the one operators are describing. He said something to the effect of New Jersey having a growing number of patients and a medical market that's slow to keep up. In 2017, the dispensary served an average of 3,200 patients. Now that's up to 5,300. I don't think we talked about those medical licenses. Sorry about that, but that wasn't on my radar. So I dug into this today, and part of the reason that probably didn't make much news is because these were supposed to be awarded back in 2019, but lawsuits related to how these were awarded held them up, and then with recreational coming online, the state reorganized the government bodies that were going to oversee this market, and that's how New Jersey's Cannabis Regulatory Commission came to be. But that delayed them even further, and now finally, earlier in October, they were awarded. The other piece of this you should know is that legislators set a couple of deadlines when they legalized. 6 months from recreational going into effect, the commission would need to have rules created. And then within 30 days of adopting those rules, they needed to start accepting applications for new business licenses. And within another 6 months, it needs to pick a date for legal sales to begin. And they've blown past the deadline to start accepting applications. That was back on September 18th or the 25th. So that's led to questions on if adult sales will be delayed, even though the commission has not set a date for those as of yet. Sorry if I'm throwing a lot at you, but here's how I'm interpreting all of this. Before Recreational ever came into the discussion, there were these medical licenses from back in 2019. They went to award those and were hit with lawsuits and then musical chairs, and finally just last month awarded those med licenses. So all this time they've had it in their minds to support the growing medical program, and I think that's why most of the comments cited by NJ.com are around that. Now there's the whole rec side of things where, let's be honest, the stakes are higher, and they don't want to go through the same arduous process they just got done dealing with. So I expect that they'll turn their focus to the rec program, if they haven't already, and go at a slower pace than operators want to avoid what they just went through with the med licenses. So I appreciate the operator's side of this and get how they see that the state is dragging its feet on this. But digging into it and seeing this series of events, I have some empathy for the people on the commission too. Sorry if I'm overanalyzing this. If I had to take a guess, it would be that we're not going to see rec sales in New Jersey until well into 2022. And I just say that because the deadline to start accepting those business applications was back in the end of September. Now that we're in November, we're going into the 3rd of 6th month that the commission has to set the date when sales will begin. And if I'm reading this right, that 6-month deadline ends towards the end of January 2022. So still plenty of time to get things back on track, but since they've fallen behind, I would bet later rather than sooner. Here's an announcement from Curaleaf International, part of Curaleaf, who today officially rebranded themselves in the European market, describing themselves as Europe's largest vertically integrated cannabis company, and saying they've experienced exponential growth in revenues in the 3 years UK legalized medicinal. They go on to highlight some countries they're currently focused on, like the UK and Germany, and lay out their vision for Europe. If you're a Curaleaf investor, I do recommend reading this. I'll link it below. I think one of the key takeaways should be the long-term outlook that's subtext in this. About 3/4 of this release is focused on the growth opportunity as they expect to see regulatory changes across the continent. For example, they say, with a population of approximately 740 million people, Europe presents a greater market size than that of North America. The potential commercial impact of legalization in Europe is significant. And if you look at the chart they provided from Prohibition Partners and Atalis, you see on a 5-year time frame they expect to be mostly in the medical market, and as recreational markets start to come online, those sales will start growing too. So this is not a short-term play, but could definitely prove fruitful over time, if they can execute well. But as you can see from the numbers here, this market is even more nascent than the US. I don't want to undercut how significant this division could turn out to be, but those are just a couple of things to keep in mind as you're evaluating the business. P.S. It is a new month and companies are starting to post about their upcoming conference participation. From my experience, not all of them are going to be made available to the public, but if you're interested in looking into that, check out the IR pages in the upcoming week. So far, only GTI has announced something, but I expect others will follow and make the rounds after Q3 earnings. And I just wanted to end by saying thank you to my new Patreon supporter, Rhode. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. My Patreon page is out there for anyone interested in supporting the channel, but honestly, I don't think I'm providing enough value to warrant any of that right now. If you would like to support the channel, I ask that you provide any feedback you may have so I can make the show as good as it can possibly be, and that you share it out with any like-minded investors that you know. So for your support and confidence in me this early on, Rhode, thank you. Alright, that is all for today. If you want to get in contact with me, the best place to do that is on Twitter. My handle is @MJMarkets. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you again soon.